Have you ever wondered what Pitt Moss is? Yes, I said Pitt Moss, not Peat Moss. On this video, we're going to get into it. You're here with Johnny and Mark Batwell on Perfect Gardens TV. If you haven't checked out our monthly membership, I highly recommend to do so. For only $2.99, you get access to over 1,570 photos, 162 videos, 10 files, 15 audio files, 562 shared links, and 86 members willing and ready to assist you through your growing practice. Please remember to like, share, and subscribe, and remember to have a great grow. Make sure to hit the join button on the bottom of every video. Okay, so we have one of our members, Johnny, on, and if you guys are either members of the channel, you kind of already know that we've created some programs to help develop other creators that want to join the VIP membership to help share some of the information with you guys, because there's just way too many products out there for one person to do all the product reviews. Like I said, we invited Johnny on because he wanted to do a review on Pitt Moss. It was actually a question from one of our subscribers on YouTube, and Johnny took the question and started running with it. So Johnny, let's get into it. What is Pitt Moss?
It is a recycled newspaper product that you can plant your plants in. That's ripped down, shredded up, remolded into like little teeny puff balls, and cellulose fibers all just sticking out all over it. Hold moisture, microbes, nutrients, keeps everything from washing away, adds aeration to your soil. It can be a top dress or a mulch layer. You can do multiple things with it. It's a very awesome product, very absorbent. I mean, you pour a little bit of water on it, it soaks it up, and then it's still, on top of that, it still has room for oxygen and air to move through because it's so porous. The water like hides in the fibers and still has room for the air to move through and get to the roots where it needs to be.
So you started to use this product about a month ago, correct? 2 weeks ago.
I bought it a month ago and then just transplanted a plant 2 weeks ago.
And can you tell us what type of conditions you were using? Like what soil media were you using before? How did you implement this, and what is it looking like so far?
One of the reasons I was checking it out is because they said you don't have to water as much. It's used 2/3 less water. And I wanted to find something that would help absorb water better when I watered my plants, because Coco and Peat, I'm kind of bad about watering sometimes. So it gets a little dry back and they don't want to take the water that well. And it just sits there. And then it just normally puddles off and then goes down the side and runs down the side. And you think you've put water in there. And next thing day later, and your plants start drooping again, but it never really got down. So I found this stuff and found out that if you mix it, I did mine half and half with, I used a organic living soil and mixed it with that. As soon as you pour the water in there, it just flows right in and it holds it. After I transplanted that plant, I watered it in, and just like they say, you got to be careful. You don't overwater, which I didn't. And a week later, I felt bad because I hadn't watered the plant. It just gave it some because I didn't want it. I know it wasn't going to die. It didn't look like it was going to die. I just felt bad that I hadn't watered it, because normally it's every 2 days, 3 days, and you got to water it. And a week later, I still didn't even need to water it. And it's still perking up. Like, it's doing great.
As we're talking more about this, I'm actually going to play the video you sent me, and just play it on the overlay, because it just does such a great job at showing all of us what we already know, right? When we get these bags that are completely dehydrated, obviously, because they don't want to ship heavy bags of soil. It just costs them more money. So they dehydrate all this soil. And by doing that, there is surface tension on a lot of this stuff. And one of the main and biggest problems most of us as growers, that we transplant into dry soil and then we water in, and that's what a lot of growers do. 8 out of 10 times, we all have done it. We've all done it. It's easier, right? Tear the bag, dump it in there, throw the plant in there. But that is, we're causing a number of things. First, we're not using biologically alive soil because it takes that soil just time to retain that water and break that surface tension. So, and in between that time, it might not ever break the surface tension. And we're thinking it will, but no roots are actually growing into those dry pockets because we tear them open later, and a lot of us will see dry pockets within our fully mature plants that have already went through complete growing cycles. In addition to this, very often or not, we will actually see a deficiency start in the plant, and then 2-3 days later, we'll see toxicities really quickly. And I've always felt that is because when we're watering, there's these dry pockets that a salt begins to form around these dry pockets, and before you know it, all these salt crystals begin to form. If it's in a salt form, it's not available to it's not in a water soluble form, right? So then the plant begins to get deficient, and then for some reason, maybe it's a good watering or something, and very quickly we'll see a plant toxicity. And so that's what we're talking about, the drybacks, and the salt builds up in the root zone. And in this video that you sent me, it was just absolutely incredible. As you guys can actually see it playing out before your eyes, even as Johnny dumps the cup out, you can see both cups, right? One just turns totally into soil. It just breaks apart, while the other one kind of has a mold and it's already absorbing. You kind of got to think about that. Also, we were talking a little bit about peat moss and using it for peat moss as well, right?
Yeah, it helps. Before I finish that, the one I just transplanted, and I was just thinking about it when you're talking about how it gets the drybacks and everything, but the roots were kind of like all to one side of the pot. When I took them out, it was like you could tell which way all the water was going every time it watered, that it wasn't going to this side, it was all going to the left. And you could definitely see it in the root mass that it was not getting water coverage everywhere in that pot. And it was just that was a 5-gallon bag. And it wasn't dried out. It was just not, well, I guess it was drying out, but that's where you could just tell where all the water was going, where the roots were. It wasn't a full root ball when it was in there. Root
system. Absolutely. Yeah. The roots aren't going to grow into dry soil. That will not happen. No. And just imagine the yield difference that all of us as growers have suffered over the years just because of dry pockets or the roots not having anywhere to grow into.
And I threw some microbiology in there, some microbes and some fungi, and I could definitely tell the difference in that they were starting to perk up. And I can't wait to see what this root ball looks like when I pull it out of the 8-pound bag.
When are you going to pull that out and transplant it? Are you going to transplant it again before harvest or before transplant? No. Okay. No, I'm done transplanting. Yeah, that one went into 8. I could transplant it again. One thing also additionally about this product, and you said that they have 4 or 6 other products.
They have the organic potting mix. They have the nutrient enhanced potting soil, a organic soil conditioner, a Coco complete core blend, and they call it a P1 peat reduced, and then a P2 peat reduced, which one has a little bit more in it than the other, and one has bark in it. I guess the bark is a little more organic to them, but it's still, I guess it's all organic because it's peat based. But they don't consider it organic. They actually list the plentiful and the soil conditioner as organic.
I wonder how well this product with that wood-based one would work well for mushroom growing. Personally, I would love to see what that would look like, just because it seems like both of these, they're already using both of these types of products for mushrooms.
They do have a mushroom thing in there too, I think.
Oh, they do. Interesting. Another thing also, what I kind of also like about the P1, it sounds like it's a Pitt Moss and Peat Moss, correct?
Yes.
Okay, so one of the things, I'm a big proponent of not using Pro Mix or Peat Moss unless you're using it for seedlings or unless you're cutting it with cocoa and some soil, just because the peat moss actually, when nitrogen touches it, it begins to break down, it begins to get anaerobic really quickly, and it compacts on the roots. And very often I'll actually see plant deficiencies very quickly because, again, the nutrients can't penetrate the root system. the root system's getting toxic and it's beginning to die off. So when I found out they had a peat moss blend, I was also like, wow, I think you can then take your peat moss, and you're talking about this, right? They have, how does this help with the carbon footprint? You were talking a little bit around that. They were talking about for the marketing of the company.
For each cubic foot of Pitt Moss that you use, you reduce your carbon footprint by 2,116 pounds.
Okay, that's huge. You gotta think about what you're doing, right? We're on this channel.
That's a cubic foot. That's one. It's a cubic foot.
Yeah. One barely any. That's probably behind you, probably 3 cubic feet or 2 cubic feet of soil, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so I mean, guys,
that reduces it by 4,000 pounds of carbon right there by using a recycled product from paper that's already there, that's not going into the landfill, that's not making other gases in the landfill, and it's being used. It can add not add nutrients, but it's going to add value to your garden or your plant that you're planting it in, on top of it's getting taken out of a landfill.
And no heavy metals, none of that stuff, right? Because they wash and remove all the inks, all those things.
Scientists test every batch that goes through there to make sure all the heavy metals are out. They've done the research on what they've got to do. They went as far as to take it to Shark Tank and put it on Shark Tank and got 3 of the sharks to buy into their company.
To watch that video, guys, make sure to check out the link right above here. In addition, I mean, just kind of put a bigger, even more of an aspect of what you're describing right there, right? Just yesterday, I got with a new client, and his grower that he hired actually ripped him off, took all the product and left behind hundreds of bags of cocoa. A lot of people still run into these types of issues right now, but all that cocoa is viable. It can still be used, and you got to think about that, right? That cocoa is being harvested in Indonesia, and I know it's a byproduct because it's just falling off the trees, it's growing, they have tons of it, but you still have to think about the carbon footprint of harvesting it, shipping it, bagging it, shipping it, God knows how many other times, and then getting it over to you, right? And if you're able to take recycled paper from something that is here in the United States, this is the US based product too, right?
Yep, in Pennsylvania.
So guys, they take recycled paper from here in the United States, our trash. They create a product. They don't ship it back over to China and say, hey guys, fix our problem for us and then ship it back. Because a lot of companies will do that. Talk about the steel industry, talk about a number of other industries. They take our recycled trash, they wash it, clean it, package it here in the United States, and then ship it back to us. And you guys have to think about that when you're using just this, and you're using it with your cocoa or your peat moss, you're reducing the bogs from being drained and scraped. All that peat moss is doing something for our ecosystem. And every single time we're harvesting it, we're also destroying our environment. So, and I know there are commercial farms to do these things, but once again, this is Perfect Gardens, right? And the Perfect Gardens is also taking a higher conscious viewpoint around what you're doing on a daily basis and seeing if you can implement these techniques from a small grow and seeing if we can actually move it forward into a large commercial production. And this is where it starts here. It starts with Johnny raising his hand. It starts with you guys asking questions and saying, hey, how about this product? Is it a good product to use? And it's about us getting on there and figuring it out. Johnny, what else you got? Can you share a few more features and benefits of this product before we jump off?
Well, this product is 100% peat free. It's Amari listed. It's a carbon rich soil amendment that enhance a living soil environment to support a regenerative agriculture. There you go.
No, I mean, it's all about creating the right home for the microbes, right?
It is. And there's plenty of it in there. There's plenty of room. It's just like biochar, where it has all the little teeny nooks and crannies and cracks and stuff for it to get into, because they're tiny little things. They can fit in all kinds of places, and there's lots of them there.
when you're growing with clones, guys, your root system actually goes horizontal. If you don't grow microbiology, your root system will grow up. Actually, it's very interesting. That's why you'll see your roots grow up above the and then back down. And you're always maybe wondering, why are the root systems growing? And we see it like we're walking across the tree stumps, right? And we see these big old stumps that the roots actually grew up before growing back down. And that's because they didn't have microbiology. Because when you're using clones, root systems growing in a horizontal direction, if you do not have a moist top layer, and this is something that Johnny was talking to me about, that he's actually recently put some of this on his cocoa pots that are just cocoa. He put it out as a mulch layer to help retain water. And if you do not have a moist environment, the microbes will not be flourishing. They will not be alive. So you kind of got to think about it. We're always talking about a mulch layer or a cover crop just to help keep the microbes alive right on top of the soil. And again, that clone system, right? If it goes horizontal. So if you don't have a moist environment, you're going to have a quarter inch to a half inch of soil with no root system. And again, in that top layer of that soil, if you're using liquid nutrients at all at any level, that's where salts, again, can also build up. So it's really important to keep a moist environment. And you're talking about that, right? The top layer that you use, is it staying moist longer?
Yes. I put about a 3/4 of an inch layer all the way around. Just like the top layer dries out just a little bit, but you can still feel the moisture in that. And then all the soil underneath it, or the cocoa, is damp still from watering 4 days ago. Not only does it like hold it in from evaporating, it holds it when you pour it in there too. When you're watering your plant, it's holding the moisture in that 3/4 of an inch that I got there too, on top of everything that's underneath it.
Guys, if you're growing in a desert, if you're growing in a high altitude climate, water and the evaporation of water is a big deal. Just like how we showed you in the video we're doing with the overlay, right? This does retain your water. You had less water drain off, and you got to think about this. If you can water less and it penetrate your entire soil system, and it holds and retains that water in those hotter environments, you're going to be watering less, and your microbes, once again, are going to stay alive because they're not going through these dry back situations. Go ahead.
I'm going to try cloning in it, see how it works. Like, pack like little cups and try and put some clones in it, see how they, without any soil, just straight in there, to see if it helps with aeration and letting the roots grow faster, and instead of being in one of the little root riot things or something like that that's packed in there. Mm-hmm. I don't know, they just seem like they
dry out.
They obviously work, and they do dry out, but also, they just seem like they're really dense and maybe a little harder for the roots to grow through compared to something not thin, but airier and softer like this is.
Anyone that clones with root riots, and this is actually the reason why most people get away from the root riots and using rockwool cubes, and that's because exactly what you're saying. And we all know this, right? When those root riot cubes dry out, it's almost impossible for them to retain water again. It takes a long time for those to re-soak up water. And that's why so many people go over to the rockwool, which again is a horrible product. That's fiberglass, and it never breaks down. It becomes a permanent problem for the landfill. So, I mean, I think that's going to be a great idea. I'm really looking forward to hearing your feedback on that one for the cloning. Absolutely.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I've only cloned one time. And so I was just thinking about it. I was like, man, I bet you that would probably work pretty good in a clone. If you like pack a little cell packet or something like that. And
use 1 ml of drops of balance with your water when you're soaking the Pitt Moss or moisturizing it, because like you're saying, there isn't a lot of micronutrients in there. I could probably see something. So I would probably put a little bit of beneficial bacteria and fungi, 1 ml drops of balance with water, and maybe a drop or two of kelp in that water. You know what I'm saying? And I bet you anything that your roots, that's going to take off 100%.
I wouldn't doubt it, man. All those things added up, man. It's got to be a good 100%. I don't see why it wouldn't work.
So far in the last 2 weeks, you've liked this product, correct?
Yes. Okay. I would definitely promote this product. It was an eye-opener from me, and I'm excited to use it in my outside garden this summer or spring. I've got some seedlings I'm going to start sprouting those for the spring to get my garden going, and I'm excited. Got lots of plans.
Guys, if you guys would like to see more videos about Pitt Moss on Johnny's garden from indoor and his outdoor garden as we get going this year, please leave a comment down below. Johnny, do you have any other things you'd like to share with the channel before we get off?
Anybody interested? $2.99, good deal. Perfect Gardens, man. Mark's an awesome dude. He can help you out if you need it.
Johnny, honestly, we're an army of growers, so you're helping everyone out. So thank you so much for just taking the time to do this. Appreciate you, brother. Also, please remember to like, share, and subscribe.
And here with crab meal, we also have a good source of calcium, but I want people to start looking at their ingredients, not just as a food source, but also what is making up the total mass of that soil for drainage. So these pieces of shell, whether it's oyster shell, crab meal, kelp, the physical matter is going to help in drainage and water retention as well. So not just looking at it as a food source, but also improving your drainage as well.